Chopin versus Liszt, the two famous Romantic-era composers. Liszt and Chopin were born when the piano was already a popular and established instrument. Both composers drew heavily from the musical traditions of their native countries, Poland and Hungary, respectively, to create a unique sound that subtly blended elements of classical music with more modern innovations. The two composers also greatly influenced each other's works. Chopin was an admirer of Liszt's virtuosity, while Liszt was a great admirer of Chopin's musical expressiveness and delicacy. This article will explore the similarities and differences between these two great composers. Chopin versus Liszt. As emerging pianists, Liszt and Chopin were exceptional from an early age. They had supportive families who ensured that they received the best available tuition. This was undoubtedly a big sacrifice by their families, as neither came from wealth. Chopin was born in Zelazowa Wola in Poland in 1810, while Liszt was born in Döblingen, Austria, in 1811. Eventually, Chopin was sent to Warsaw to study with Zioni and Elsner, while Liszt practiced under the mentorship of Czerny. Their tutors proved to be immensely valuable in cultivating their formidable techniques. Until age 20, Chopin's family remained supportive and allowed him to focus on his musical skills. While Liszt lived a rather dramatic life, at 16, he lived in Paris and focused solely on the piano. Unlike Chopin, who always felt a deep connection with his homeland, Liszt left Hungary early but returned after the devastating floods of 1838. It was only then that he diverted his attention toward traditional Hungarian music. They first met at Chopin's first performance in February of 1832 at the famous Salle Pleyel in Paris. They played each other's compositions, and each had a special admiration for the other's work. However, their paths diverged, and each started to specialize in their area of interest. Chopin is best known for his beautiful melodies, refined touch, and delicate expression. His works focus on subtle emotion rather than technical prowess and often use simple structures with frequent repetition of motifs. His works feature a lot of rubato, which requires the player to hold one or two notes for longer than expected and often employs chromaticism. On the other hand, Liszt's music was characterized by its complexity, power, and passion. He was admired for his dazzling technique and virtuosic showmanship. The most obvious difference between Chopin's and Liszt's music is their approach to composition. While Chopin focused on creating short salon pieces, Liszt was more ambitious and often wrote larger works for the concert stage. As a result, Chopin's musical output is generally more intimate and personal, while Liszt's is larger in scale and scope. In terms of style, Chopin was a staunch traditionalist who drew heavily from the works of Bach and Mozart. A focus on melody, harmony, counterpoint, and structure characterizes his compositions. On the other hand, Liszt's music often featured more modern and progressive elements, such as chromaticism, modulations, and harmonic progressions. The rivalry between the two composers was legendary. Chopin viewed Liszt as a self-promoter who lacked true musical talent. On the other hand, Liszt admired Chopin's technique and elegance but felt that his compositions lacked emotional depth. Despite their differences, both composers are celebrated for their influence on the Romantic music era and remain two of the most beloved composers of all time. Chopin did not live long enough to witness the full impact of his work on the world of classical music. However, he left behind a rich legacy that generations of listeners have loved and admired. Liszt's brilliance was equally evident in his lifetime, but more recently, he has been recognized as one of the most important figures in 19th-century Romanticism. After Chopin's death, Liszt wrote a book called The Life of Chopin. The book expressed his admiration for the composer and highlighted his musical genius. The two men created music that continues to inspire audiences today, and their rivalry has come to define an integral part of Romantic classical music. Though they had different approaches, both Chopin and Liszt were masters at expressing emotion through the piano and have left behind a lasting legacy. His most celebrated compositions are the Ballade 1-4, written from 1835 to 1843. These, the series of etudes, both Opus 10 and Opus 25, are phenomenal compositions that illustrate, if there was any doubt, that Chopin's technique was equal to his counterpart. Liszt eventually loses depth with his compositions, where it sometimes feels as if he wants us to listen in awe at what he can play without being able to follow the music. His main works include 12 symphonic poems, 2 piano concertos, and a range of solo works such as La Campanella, Liebestraum, and many others. Many of Liszt's compositions pay homage to Chopin with a definite influence of his etudes focusing on technique development. The technical focus often comes without the melodic luxury of Chopin. To conclude, the music of Chopin and Liszt is a timeless legacy of Romanticism. They each had a unique composition and performance approach that made them memorable figures in classical music history. The rivalry between them was legendary, but it also drove them forward to create some of the most beautiful compositions ever written for the piano.